Okay, good morning, everybody. Thanks again for joining me this morning. My name is Phil Stepney, and we are back and live here on Africam Morning Show. Let's see what comes our way for the next 30 minutes. We're going to move between all the cameras and see what happens, see what we see, what we hear. Looks like it's a wonderful sunny day in most of the areas where the cameras are. I'm sure it's nice and hot up there again now that we're pretty much more or less in the middle of summer. Although here at Tembe there does seem to be a bit of a breeze, which I'm sure is always welcome. As you can see, this elephant bull is going nowhere in a rush. No need to spend any unnecessary energy. He was throwing some dust on himself. As usual, he had already drunk before that, so he's slowly moving through his routine. Nice big bull. How wide his forehead is. It's got well-torn ears over the years. Tusks are wide apart. They're not that long. That is for a Tembe elephant. But I would say he's maybe even in his early 40s. He's quite just a big body. Also his movement, nice and slow. He's been around for a while. We were talking yesterday with regards to elephants sleeping. Do they lie down or stand up and rest? And that's what he's doing right there. You see his trunk is completely relaxed. He's just taking a bit of a standing rest. Slowly flapping his ears. Really important that to keep him cool. That's all that he's doing there. He's blowing wind across his body. You can see he's got some wet patches on his body. You can imagine how that helps with cooling that big system down. And then there's also big veins carrying all the blood, going through them at least, very close to the surface of the skin there, also in shade pretty much all the time. And that blood then helps to cool the core temperature of the elephant. So you'll see them doing that all day long on hot days. And in a place like Tembe, it's pretty hot all year round. Often people mistake ear flapping as a sign of aggravation. Typically, if they're aggravated with something, they'll push their ears forward. They don't really need to make themselves look any bigger, but that does present a larger picture, but also enables them to hear every little bit of movement of the problem that lies ahead of them. Sometimes they shake their head in aggravation, and that, of course, in turn shakes the ears. But that's a different movement altogether. We'll just have a pan around here. Let's have a listen, see what else is around the waterhole. It's quite an interesting sound. It sounds like a bleat. It sounds like maybe a young Inyala, or maybe a young Impala is calling for its parent, perhaps. I'm not 100% sure, but let's keep listening and maybe the camera can keep panning around. And we can see maybe that waterbuck has a baby. But just have a listen for that bleat. I'm talking about. There it went again. It actually sounds like a wildebeest calf. That's an interesting sound. It's coming from the waterbuck. There's a bit of a delay, but you can see its mouth moving. I wonder if it's a waterbuck calling its calf. You learn something every day. It's quite unusual to hear waterbuck at all. We heard them the other day when there was a female trying to give birth on Olifants River, and she gave an alarm at a crocodile. And now this one seems to be calling out, my guess is to its calf. Maybe it lost its calf. It's quite likely that lions or another predator got hold of it. Quite interesting. Let's keep listening for a bit and see if anything responds to the call. It's quite tricky to work out exactly what's going on, but now that we know it's the female waterbuck calling, that's solved that problem. And we'll keep watching and keep listening if she keeps calling in that area. If she has indeed lost her calf through predation, she'll probably call for maybe today and possibly tomorrow. I didn't hear her or any sign of it yesterday. It's quite possible that lions could have got hold of the baby over last night. There was some lion activity at the waterhole last night, so she might just be calling in hope. Unless, of course, it's just lost. Sometimes they stash their babies in thicket and then move off to feed. It's usually when they're really young. A lot of antelope babies are born scentless. In fact, I've seen how an Inyala baby was stashed in some leaf litter on one side of a tree, and a female leopard was sleeping on the other side of the tree. We thought for sure she'd be tickets. But when we came back in the afternoon drive, the leopard had moved off and the Nyala baby was still there unharmed. Quite an interesting setup. So maybe this waterbuck has stashed her baby and she's trying to locate it again. She's still calling. Okay, well, I'd just like to cross over to Kwapan. We'll come back here and keep listening. We'll definitely keep a tab on that scenario or that story unfolding at Tembe. Just wanted to have a look here again for anything, but in particular those Egyptian geese babies. There's 3 Egyptian geese there, but still no sign of any of the babies. Let's let the camera pan around a little, just see what's out there today. Also seems to be a bit breezy here at Kwa. It's quite far away from Tembe. This is more in the central part of the country. It's a lot drier and a dry heat that happens here. Tembe is nice and humid, or maybe it's not nice, it's just humid. But here in the Kwamaritani area and the Pilansberg Game Reserve, it can push into the 40s and be really quite a powerful sun. These impala don't seem to mind. They're having a good feed on the grass. Looks like a group of males. They've all got horns of varying sizes. The ones on the right there look to be about a year and a half perhaps. The ones where the horns have started to point towards each other, they're about 2 or 3. And then there's some bigger males on the left going towards 4. In fact, the one on the far left, he looks to be the biggest of the lot. We've often seen them in these bachelor herds. At the moment, they're all friends, or at least they're using each other for the same purpose. It's safety in numbers. But come next year, May, June, they'll fight each other for breeding rights. Those youngsters looking to maybe have a sparring match. Just a little tussle. Let's see if anything has come down to the water in these few minutes. Yesterday we did a pan around and there was nothing, and when we got back there was an elephant. I do wonder what happened to the hippo that almost took up new residency here. Obviously wasn't good enough. I'm sure one will take this spot at some point. For now we have the Egyptian geese ruling the roost in a very relaxed manner, taking it nice and easy today. No sign of the chicks. Okay, apart from the impalas and the Egyptian geese, nobody's around just yet. We're going to cross over to the olifants camp. Always one of my favorite views. Also has some of the best sound. And you never quite know what's under those fig trees. Although I would say 7 out of 10 times you wouldn't go wrong with guessing baboon or impala. But let's have a look around and see what's happening this morning. No sign of the baboons or impala this morning. Moved off for a different type of food. So they roost up in those fig trees and then move off to feed during the day. Yesterday afternoon, they came past They had a good feed on the fig trees, and it's quite convenient. Have one last feed, a grooming session, and then up into bed. Safest place to be. I'm hoping that at some point we'll see there's a mating pair of lions that we saw last weekend, kind of in between Rosie's pan and the river. It's about a 45-minute drive, but it is quite likely that we could be seen at either of these camps. It's always good to look around. It's also good to listen. They are quite vocal during this time. The wonderful call of the woodlands kingfisher again. So from here, I'm keen to have a look here at Rosie's pan. It's not really close to the Olifants camp, but it's in the general vicinity. It's always good to listen out what's going on in the area. The cameras have great microphones. The sound is brilliant. Often a giveaway of what's in the area. So let's have a listen as the camera pans around. The beautiful call of the emerald spotted wood dove or green spotted wood dove. Okay, apart from the wood dove, which is a beautiful sound to hear, again, everyone's lying low today. It seems it's probably got to do with the fact that it's really hot. No more cloud cover. In the midday, things start to calm down a little. But that's okay. Let's go and have a look at Nkoropan. The wonderful part of these cameras actually is the fact that you never quite know what you're going to see. It's completely unscripted, or it is what it is, which is quite a unusual concept in these days that we're moving through. I love the idea of having a good look around just in case something popped up. And relatively speaking, we get to see incredible things on these cameras, mainly due to the fact that there's zero interference from humans' side. No vehicles, no people. And I think it does make a difference to what one sees with regards to animal behavior. So let's have a look around here at Nkora. There's a question from Mediba. I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly, Mediba. The question is, do the animals ever see or hear the cameras moving around? There is a little bit of sound. Sometimes you see elephants that come right up to the camera, give a little look towards the camera, but actually it's more silent than anything else. So it doesn't make very much noise at all. Sometimes if we go to Cat-Eye-Pan, we see impalas right up against the rocks that are around the camera, the base of the camera. That's there so that elephants don't get too close, because they'll use the posts as rubbing objects. But the camera sound is hardly loud at all and doesn't disturb their behavior at all. But it is quite a good question. So here we also have 2 Egyptian geese, also just enjoying the edge of the waterhole. But again, it seems to be the same all round. Not much movement in the open areas. I would say it's probably close to 40 degrees out here right now. Here at Nkora, there doesn't even seem to be much wind. So it's a good thing for the animals to be relaxing in the shade and then get moving as it gets cooler. Let's go across to Taupan. We'll do the same thing there. Let's just have a good look around here. There's a bit of clouds. This is probably about 300 odd kilometers to the west and slightly north of Nkora. So the weather system's slightly different. Still got some clouds up there. Let's have a look around and see what's happening here. Interesting. There must be a very important meeting out just on the edge of the camera's visibility today. One wildebeest. And what looks like an impala at the back there. That wildebeest is adamant. He doesn't want to lose his spot. He's going to stay here. It's good feeding and good water. And as things start to dry up, you'll find that more and more wildebeest start coming in and be attracted to his territory. It's exactly what he's waiting for. If he had to move off, another bull coming, he could have some bad timing when it comes to being a territorial dominant male. So he's going to stick it out here, make friends with the impala until others join him. Okay, I'd like to move across to some of the photographs, some of the snapshots taken over the last day or two. This one's quite an interesting one. Photograph taken at Naledi by Norm. And the question here is, what are we looking at? It's a very good question. And it looks to me like they're balls of dung rolled by dung beetles. What exactly happened to the dung beetles, I'm not too sure. It's quite interesting that there's two here. But essentially, dung beetles will go to piles of dung, mostly elephant or buffalo droppings. Some specialize in many different kinds of dung beetles, and they specialize in essentially cleaning up various animals' droppings. But the most common ones are the ones that feed on elephant and buffalo dung and rhino dung. And they roll these big, well, first they collect. Their forefeet are shaped like rakes, and they rake up the dung. Their heads are actually shaped like shovels or spades. Tomato, tomato. And they use that shovel-shaped head to loosen the dropping. They rake it together into a pile until it gets quite large. The one on the left there looks bigger than the one on the left, but you can get really big, double the size of a tennis ball sometimes, piles of dung. And as they start to roll them away, the dropping collects sand on the ground, essentially plastering it together, and that's how it gets its round shape. Its back legs are actually really wide, so they can straddle the ball. So they grab the ball with their back legs, essentially forcing them into a handstand, and they use their powerful front legs to push them backwards. And that's how they move that ball, and they're trying to move that ball to get away from potential competition. So they'll go and find a soft spot in the ground to bury the dropping, and that's where they'll feed on it. Sometimes you find that there's two dung beetles attached to the ball, one pushing and one just adding to the weight. The one just adding to the weight, or should I be careful what I say there? The one on top is the female, and she's catching a ride, and the male will be rolling the ball. If you see that happening in the bush, that's a natal ball. They've laid one egg inside that ball. They'll bury that dropping, and eventually the larvae will hatch inside the dung ball and feed its way out. If, however, you see a smaller ball being rolled by one dung beetle, that'll be a feeding ball. It'll just be breakfast, lunch, or supper. Talking about breakfast, lunch, or supper, a potential thing that could have happened here, you might find that the dung beetles were rolling their balls and a predator caught them. So things like genets will feed on them, civets will feed on them, and in particular, honey badgers. So I'm not sure what happened to the dung beetles here. They may have also bumped into each other and landed up having a bit of a fight, and then they could have come back. This is a still shot. They could have come back and grabbed the balls and rolled on, but this snapshot is quite an interesting one. It's almost like looking at UFOs. But it is something I love looking out for when in the bush. Dung beetles. Here's another photograph from the small things out there to the biggest things out there, and in this case, a really large herd of elephants taken by Lucia Dunkoropan. And I just thought this photograph was a great shot of a big herd of elephants. You often see 7 or 8. But here, let's have a count. 2, at least 21. And it's just a great illustration of what does come to the cameras. There's great diversity. Okay, I just want to go back to Tembi and just have one last listen, just in case that waterbuck is still calling just before we end the show this morning. Let's have a listen out. Okay, so it seems like she's moved off or stopped calling or both. But I do think it's well worth keep visiting this waterhole, keep listening. It's potentially a good story. That is, of course, if we get the next chapter. Folks, thanks so much for joining me this morning here on Africam. It's always a wonderful time of day to just sit back and watch a wild country happen in front of us. Lots to learn and lots to see. Guys, I look forward to seeing you or spending time with you again tomorrow, the afternoon show in the Hide. Have a great day further and keep watching the cams. You never know what you're going to see.